very good afternoon and welcome to What's Not Making Headlines, the show that focuses on important stories that mainstream news might have missed. I'm Ananda Khomo, and I'll be taking you through various stories that should be dominating our headlines. Now, I would like to hear your views on whichever stories you feel comfortable with. The number to dial there is 011 542 1046, and you can call us and share in those stories. Now, the first story we're covering today, Soweto is experiencing a peak in cases of domestic violence directed at women. Now, Africa Check says that a published study indicated that police could identify the perpetrator in almost 2,000 of an estimated 2,300 cases. Now, more than half of the murders are reported to be by an intimate partner. The rise in femicide propelled women in Soweto to take to the streets in protest against these killings. Women survivors told of their abuse through stories, and they'd also written poems about their ordeals. Joining me in studio, as usual, we've got two guests who will be just basically talking to us throughout these stories that we're covering today. And we've got Mzwandile Kati, who's from the Soweto Urban News, editor at Soweto Urban, as well as Grace Bilo, also a journalist at Soweto Urban. A very warm welcome to you guys. Let's talk about the story. Now, the scourge in gender-based violence and femicide is a continuing topic throughout the country, especially this year. Let's start with you, Grace. What's your issue? What's your view on this issue, basically?
Hi, Ananda. Thank you so much for having us. My views, wow. I just feel like femicide, it's actually much of a bigger problem than we actually make it out to be. It doesn't get enough news time, doesn't get enough time on the news. Also, especially in Soweto, because in Soweto there's a lot of black people and gender-based violence is really prevalent within our community. So I think it should definitely be getting more news time, like with this story that we covered with Nomsa Mbuyisa. She was killed by her partner of over 20 years, and she was shot in broad daylight in front of a group of people, and
including her son, 19-year-old son.
Exactly, and this is happening all across Soweto, so I definitely think we should be giving more attention to it and gathering more people to find solutions to the problem, because abuse it's a systematic thing. It's not just, leave him, because you can leave him, but she left him, and look what happened to him.
Exactly.
To her, rather. So, yeah.
And then Mzwandile, I mean, how can we best use the platforms that we are afforded as journalists to further highlight these kinds of issues?
Well, thank you for having me. Specifically with this story of Nomsa Mbuyisa, it has sparked a lot of outrage in the community across Soweto. So we, as the Soweto Urban newspapers, we have been following the story and all other stories around that one, because like Grace has said, there's been a lot of activism, marches, and all those things happening. So I think we, as community media as well, have a big role to play in raising awareness against domestic violence, issues of gender-based violence, and all those kind of things. So this is one of the biggest stories that has happened this year in Soweto around this issue of femicide. Because remember, we had a lot of these last year, so we were thinking, okay, maybe this year it's going down, but this big incident happened. So we are keeping an eye on the story as it
Most
unfolds.
definitely, yeah. And I love what Patrick Shai, who was addressing this march on that day at Mofolo Park, him saying that men need to be involved. And I'm not sure how people took the fact that he said, Okpa, if your boyfriend, if your brother, if your uncle is not there, that means that they are potential abusers.
I don't particularly agree with that.
Neither do I.
But I definitely do think that by them not being there, they are part of the problem. They are helping perpetuate the problem. I think as a man, you should be there, be part of the solution. If You know, there's a hashtag going on, men are trash. Every man goes on social media talking about how women are labeling them incorrectly. And women, I mean, feminists, for example, on Twitter, the report that they get back from these men is always, yeah, what about your father? What about your brother? I think they are also part of the problem, and that's what we recognize. And I think men need to recognize that too, that by not being there, by not standing up, you are perpetuating patriarchy. You are perpetuating all these stereotypes.
And they need to come on board to be part of the solution.
Exactly.
That's an interesting, piece of information that I'd like to share on this topic. Now, apparently reported cases of gender-based violence have increased in Gauteng in the past financial year by more than 550 cases were reported. Now, here's the interesting part. This is in figures between March of 2017 and April of 2018. Now, it says, Okuba, of the 550 cases reported, 75 led to convictions. 351 cases were still being investigated. Some 68 cases had been withdrawn. Now, this is the interesting part for me, that 68 of these 550 cases were withdrawn. And it brings one to the question of why would they be withdrawn? I mean, look at the Given and Belim Kari case. You know, they sought to withdraw the charges against each other, yet the NPA intervened and said, no, actually we'll decide what happens with this case. I mean, I am of the view that that's exactly what should be happening. If there's a case of domestic violence, the cases should not be allowed to be withdrawn. What's your view?
The thing is, I think the problem comes when families are involved, because you know what happens sometimes is they bring in the family members, and then they say, no, let's sit down, let's talk about this thing. You overreacted by reporting this case, or maybe the abuser, they go back and apologize and all those things, and you know there's a sense of guilt. Okay, but now this is the breadwinner, or this is the father of my child, or whatever. I mean, there's some sort of guilt, I think, amongst women or the victims of abuse. Hence, we get a lot of cases being withdrawn. I mean, like you've said, I think it's a good thing when the NPA is saying, no, we will decide. We are going on with this case so that you can set an example. Domestic violence is something that is unacceptable.
Yeah. Let me just pause there. We've got a caller, Ujabo Baloyi, who's joining us on this conversation. He's a spokesperson for the Commission for Gender Equality. A very good afternoon to you, Jabo. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us.
Good afternoon, and good afternoon to the viewers.
Great. Now, the scourge of femicide continues in the country, and the question I've posed to my panel today is what kind of conversations should be taking place around this issue? Just take us through your opinion. What kind of discussions should we be having around this issue?
The kind of discussion that is needed and is warranted, it's one of to say to men and boy children, let us do debriefing in the manner in which, you know, the upbringing, in the manner in which socialization and society has perceived a man to be, and the gender roles that are there in society. Those are some of the aspects that we need to begin to discuss. And also, we need to also begin to say men must begin to speak and communicate. And issues of communication can bear fruit in so far as, you know, men, you know, coping up whatever predicament they find themselves in, whatever issues that are affecting them. And also, we must deal with the issues of ego as men. We must handle the issues of effectively and ensure that, you know, certain aspects of life, you know, need us to be sober-minded and discuss effectively. Effective communication and addressing or dismantling patriarchy can help us and ensure that, you know, both men and women were equal, and that can bring us to the issues of us avoiding some of the scourge that we know we, as particularly as men, are dealing with, and particularly we are committing as men. So that can help us a great deal.
And now another question, Buti, I was just posed to my panel, is the fact that 550 reported cases over the past year. There's figures from March 2017 to April of 2018. Now, this means that women are reporting. And that's a step forward. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, basically it is. But, let's not forget that, we have got rural provinces whereby people are not reporting it because of things that you have just mentioned up there. The issues of, people with wrong cases. And our police officers playing the role of counselors. And be that it may be society also not being supportive. You'll find out, when a woman is raped, a woman is beaten, a woman when is brutalized, it's women who still support that man. That's why women they play a big role in entrenching patriarchy and affirming the role of men in society, whereas they're supposed to disassociate themselves, regardless of political affiliation, regardless of religious affiliation. A woman must be supportive of one another in an endeavor to ensure that they stop the carnage. If they can do that, women, that will help us as people, will ensure that, we work in a narrative that begins to say women are very objective in dealing with issues. You cannot be that, I do something today and women said, no, he works for the Commission for Gender Equality. Let's support him. He might not have done it. I will have done it, and women must just wait for the rule of law to take its course. And we're just also appealing to society not to put undue pressure to women out there who are laying these cases. And women who have got genuine cases must report them. If they don't get fairness, there's the Commission for Gender Equality to assist them. We have assisted a lot, and we continue in this journey to ensure that, we do something that, is beneficial to women and society.
One last question before we let you go, sir. Now, marches. We're having these marches regularly to bring awareness, but how effective are they? That's the question. I know that Soweto Urban ran the story and actually interviewed a couple of women, and women are saying, no, these marches are actually not enough.
You know what, from where we're sitting at the Commission for Gender Equality, these marches are very effective. It depends on who talks to who and who knows what. When we look at nationally, the moment that we had the 100-man march, nothing of sort, people are beginning to dialogue to say, it's the rampage that men have been doing to women. It's going down. The police are being sensitized. We have got Patrick Shai speaking very vociferously on issues like this. We have got the total shutdown on the 1st of August, which the Commission for Gender Equality supports and endorses greatly. And that, by so doing, we're talking and raising awareness. It cannot be that, we expect, quick wins. We don't have a low-hanging fruit that, we can pick from. We just have to soldier on. These things have been there for years, and then it won't be taking 2 or 3 matches for us to undo the damage. What we can do is engage the boy child at a young age and instill and inculcate the values of respect and inculcate the values of communication and walking away, and also societal issues. Bring the Ubuntu principle back to society to say, let's make sure that, we rally against one another in an endeavor to bring justice and fairness to the carnage of gender-based violence. It cannot be that, we criticize one event and say it didn't bring. We have seen and we have monitored through our monitoring system as a commission that, something is happening. People now are okay with the issues, and then long may it continue that, we continue in all the provinces, not only in Gauteng, but throughout, even rural provinces, KwaZulu-Natal, Limpopo, Eastern Cape, and Mpumalanga, to raise the awareness against the carnage.
All right. Thank you so much, sir. That was Jabu Baloyi speaking to us for the Commission for Gender Equality. Now, this is a topic that could go on forever, but we do have other stories that we need to get through. Now, the New Clare community is reeling from shock and fear after 3 mysterious shootings occurred in one day within hours of each other. Police still have not been able to confirm if the shootings are linked or what the motive behind them are. Now, the day began with a shooting outside a New Clare primary school when a man was shot in the head while allegedly fetching his child from school. Now, an hour later, another man was shot a street away from the school. Again, another hour later, another person was deceased after being shot not far from the school. No learner, fortunately, was harmed in these shootings. Now, Mzwandile, let's come to you. I mean, my biggest concern is that this is taking place in the proximity of schools, a primary school. Just take us through this incident of what you know.
Yeah, so what we know about this story right now is apparently the first man who was shot in the afternoon on Tuesday, he was apparently going to the school to fetch the child. So there was another vehicle which drove past, and then there was open fire. he was rushed to hospital, and then that's where he...
So do we know if it was a robbery, an attempted hijacking? I mean,
At this stage, I mean, according to the information that we got from the police, it's not clear if it was a robbery or is it a gang-related violence or anything like that. And then an hour later, again, someone else was shot not far from the school. So the Department of Education is offering support, I mean, psychological support to the kids, because, I mean, this thing happened just outside the school and some of the learners witnessed it.
yeah,
So,
let's talk about New Clare as an area. I mean, is crime there an issue? I mean, this also brings in the issue of the Ennerdale incident where Udada mistakenly shot, well, allegedly mistakenly shot his son, but now, do you understand what I'm saying? This brings...
Gang-related shootings actually in the Westbury area have actually been a big problem for the past year. So it's gotten to a point where our reporter for a side, every time she gets a call about a shooting, she's like, oh, another day at the job, you know? So the crime levels, they are very high, and it appears to be gang-related. So yeah, gang-related shootings in that area, a big problem, and it appears that nothing is being done about it because a year later, 3 people have died in one day.
And the thing is, we haven't heard about any arrest happening with this. I mean, even though police are saying it can't be confirmed if it's gang-related violence, but I think the situation there in Westbury, New Clare, in that area, is not that different from the situation in the Cape Flats, in the Cape Flats and Cape Town, in the Western Cape. I mean, with all the gang-related violence and all those things, because I mean, almost every week or every month there is a shooting happening there. I mean, the residents are scared. You can't be walking around the streets at night because you might get a stray bullet or anything like that.
And it worries me because we're not getting much traction on stories such as this.
Exactly.
I mean, this happened this past week.
Yes, this past week on Tuesday, actually, yeah.
Tuesday afternoon.
Yeah.
This is amazing that we're not covering stories that affect our children at the end of the day. I mean, this is happening outside a primary school.
Exactly.
Now, a month after the killing of Floyd Makwe and Rodney Matebula of Boomtown in Orlando East, the community is still seeking justice. Police have charged someone, but there has been no court appearance, something which has angered the residents of Boomtown. There has been a march to the police demanding hard work be dedicated to resolving this double murder case, which still remains a mystery. But Mzwandile, I know you covered this story. Now, if you can just tell us first the circumstances surrounding the murder, the alleged murder of these two.
So, these 2 men were allegedly murdered by a shipping queen, an old woman. Basically, one weekend at night, they knocked on her door, and according to reports, police reports and all, this lady used something, an axe or something, and then they smacked these 2 men. They passed away. So, right now, up until now, the community is complaining that, okay, but these men died, and then we haven't seen any progress with the police, with the arrest, court appearances, and all those things. What is happening? So, residents of Orlando East, led by leaders who some of them represent political parties, they've marched to the police station twice, demanding answers. What is happening with this case? Any arrest, justice for these 2 men? What is happening?
And I know that one of the political leaders you're talking about is Parliament member Tshepo Mhlongo, which means then this is a big case if he would get involved in it. But now we understand that there was a meeting that took place. What transpired during that meeting? I mean, what was the way forward discussed?
Basically, that one was a community meeting. So a representative from the police or from the prosecutor's office was there to brief the community. I would say, okay, right now we don't have enough evidence regarding this case, regarding this suspect. So, but we are working on a case. But you know what happens in the community? I mean, people they don't have that much patience with the police, especially in Orlando East. There has been a lot of complaints regarding the police station and how the police work there. So I think all those factors come into play in this, when it comes to this case. Hence, there's been these protests or marches to the police station.
And now, before we wrap up this story, so the suspect remains behind bars?
Yes.
And the investigating officer, what is he saying?
They are still investigating. That's what they're saying. They are still investigating, but I think the community residents don't have that enough patience.
No, they don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we saw that residents want answers, protesting outside the court.
Yes.
All right, we'll see how this story pans out. Now we move on to another story. The issues of inadequate power supply continues to dominate communities and growing townships. The people of Protea Glen have been taken to the streets, voicing their frustrations over recurring power outages as more people are moving into their area. Some residents who have been living there for years complain of electricity not being upgraded to support and handle the increasing demand as more extensions are being built. Community members are blaming Eskom for ignoring them and not catering to the increasing demands. Grace, you covered this story. We seem to be seeing a lot of protests around the area of Protea Glen. I mean, if it's not water, if it's not houses, but I think electricity is one, I mean, to really look into, especially as we are in winter.
Yeah, and it's not just Protea Glen. It's all around Soweto. Almost every week we cover protests regarding electricity. But in Protea Glen specifically, there's a problem with the fact that when it was started in 1991. So it's a historic issue because now it's an infrastructure issue. The place has grown, and now the meter boxes that are there cannot support all the houses that are there because it has just grown so sporadically. It's unbelievable because we have until like extension 35 now, and this problem was in phase 1. So you can imagine. And then the problem here is that this meter box also connects a school. So this problem actually started in 1991 when the people moved there. I spoke to a few residents who have been living there since 1991. So clearly, it's more than just the fact that the place is growing. The actual meter boxes must have been faulty from the start because now they say they've had these problems since they moved there. So it's an infrastructure issue that Eskom really needs to look into, I think.
Now, there was also talk about them calling in the councillor to spearhead the resolution of this problem. I mean, what have they benefited from that?
I think the problem is actually being marred by, the solution to the problem rather, is being marred by the fact that there's a bit of conflict between the councillor and the residents. The residents feel that the councillor is not necessarily looking after their needs, whereas the councillor feel like by saying that and bringing in other parties, they are saying they have no vote of confidence in him. So it's a bit of a tug of war. However, a solution is being found to the problem.
That was going to be my next question. What has been the solution going forward? Please tell us through.
The councillor has spoken to Eskom and with other parties, of course, and they've decided that they are looking into getting a separate meter box for the school because it seems to be the problem. And they actually just want to audit the place, which is another problem for the residents because out of 98 houses in the block, only 7 people buy electricity consistently. So that poses a problem for Eskom where they now feel that these people need to pay so we can help them.
Okay, well, at least the solution has been...
The issue of electricity and Eskom in Soweto has been a problem. Not only in Protea Glen this month, but for years. Remember, Eskom started rolling out the installation of split metering system. So where they change the infrastructure and so that people can choose if they want prepaid or conventional. So what happens is now people are complaining that prepaid is expensive. And then, but also remember, we have a lot of backroom dwellers, especially in Orlando, a lot of shacks, backroom dwellers. So there's always overload, system overload or power overload, especially in winter, where we get blackouts. So that's why every week we get these protests, people blocking the streets when there's no electricity. But Eskom is saying sometimes it's beyond our control because there's overload and the infrastructure, we are trying to change the infrastructure. But on the other hand, when Eskom goes to the community to say, okay, we are installing these meters, sometimes they get chased away by angry residents who cannot afford to pay for prepaid. So all these issues lead to one big problem of illegal connections.
True.
Illegal connections, which also pose a danger for residents as well. And then also, I mean, with the issue of cost as well to Eskom and to those who are paying for electricity.
A big issue that is set to continue for years to come if something is not done about it. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for this week. A very big thank you to my guests for this week, Grace Bilo, Soweto Urban journalist, as well as editor of Soweto Urban, Mzwandile Kati. Very big thank you. And thank you as well for your time this afternoon. We'll see you again next week, same time, same place. Good day.